Okay, today we're doing the McCarthys. That's Cormac McCarthy and Joseph McCarthy, and we're also going to do McCullough. Okay, David McCullough, the historian. So, first of all, the author, Cormac McCarthy, he says, there is for a man two things in life that are very important, head and shoulders above everything else. The first is to find work that you like. And I think there's a lot of truth in that because, you're going to have to work probably 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, maybe more than that. So hopefully you're going to like it. The second thing is find someone you like to live with you. And women are really tricky. I would tell you, women are really good at faking and lying and all kinds of stuff, and you kind of start falling in love with them and they can trick you into stuff. So my advice would be spend a lot of time watching those dating coaches. Dating coaches tell you the truth. All the college professors are a bunch of lying weasels that are stupid. They're worthless, okay? But the dating coaches will tell you the truth about how to understand women better. So you put yourself in a safe position, you get a prenuptial. There's a lot of things you can do if you're going to get married, if you're going to get married at all. But it is a lot of fun to have a family and stuff. So I still recommend it, but just be careful. And what I'm also saying too is lower your expectations. Beauty's totally overrated. And the same woman who's a hot fox when she's 30, she could be a big fat slob pain in the butt by the time she's 50. So intelligence in a wife is underrated. Loyalty, responsibility, honesty, all those things can last a whole life. Friendship, all right? So anyways, all right, let's go with the quotes for Cormac McCarthy. He says, what else? He says, very few people get both, a career they like and a woman they like that with a relationship that lasts. I can tell you that's rare to get all that. Most people, it's hard to get a career you like that actually pays you money. I do all this nutrition and health stuff on the internet. I don't make any money with this. I just know it's a good thing. Okay. And I also saw the vacuum effect created by the fact that almost all the big famous ones have sold out. So I go, well, I just won't sell out. And I could be the best one just by not selling out. So you never know what worse luck your bad luck might have saved you from. Okay? There is no later. This is later. Oh, that's like Rocky, where Mickey, the coach, said, there is no tomorrow, Rocky. You got to get more intense about your training. Okay, he says, keep a little fire burning, however small, however hidden. I think that's a good one too. It's that no matter how much life beats you down, you should still be working on a hobby or another project or something that makes you happy. Because then you bounce out of it. Despite the fact you got smacked down, rejected, failed, dumped, whatever, you're still working on something good and it'll gradually develop into something better and better, whatever it might be. It just makes you happy to be doing something useful, creative, and good. So don't give that up. All right. He says, I can normally tell how intelligent a man is by how stupid he thinks I am. Yeah, that's kind of my experience too. Guys who are really smart, even if they don't think the way I do, they like me because we know we're both interesting to talk to. Versus guys in that range, IQ range of about 130 to 145, sometimes they pick arguments with me. I kick their ass pretty fast intellectually, but they have a little jealous resentment of me. I have to be careful with that group. And I know who loves me. Young guys always like me because they know I can teach them so much so fast. I can accelerate their learning, like rocket jet fuel. So they love being around me. Okay, let's see. There are hard lessons in the world. What's the hardest one? I don't know. Maybe it's just that when things are gone, they're gone and they ain't coming back. Yeah, I think that's like with women. With a woman, she's like, they call it monkey branching. She's already got a new boyfriend and then she dumps her old boyfriend. And her old boyfriend's like, what the hell happened? So he's still missing her potentially for days, weeks, months, years. And she's already far into a new relationship. She's forgotten about him altogether. And you don't talk to him again. Like if you have an old high school friend, a guy, sometimes you just go separate ways. You do your own different thing. But, your old high school girlfriend, you don't ever speak to her again. The same thing with old girlfriends. That's just the way it is. They're now with a new guy. So all that time in relationship, it kind of just gone. It's gone. Your parents die, they're gone. And that's something you have to accept in life. All right, that's why Aristotle had said too, and other people have said, find your happiness in a hobby because you can keep that your whole life. And in religion or whatever, development of a skill versus relationships come and go. People come and go. You do the best you can with it, but that's just true. That's how it is. Okay, life is brief, and to have to spend your day every day doing something that you don't want to, that somebody else wants you to, is not the best way to live it. Yeah, that's true, but the real choice it comes down to is you pretty much have to find a way to make money so you can pay all your bills and you can have a decent house in a decent neighborhood. And a lot of the good jobs, they don't pay so much. For example, if you want to be a professor of nutrition at a university, they're probably going to pay you, about $65,000 to $75,000 a year. Okay? But if you become a clinical doctor, you can make far more than that. But it would be a lot more fun to be that nutrition professor. But that's not that much money if you want to have a nice house in a nice neighborhood. If you want to attract a nice woman. Anyways, you're going to be working 2 jobs and then you're going to be pretty tired. All right, anyways, next one, Cormac McCarthy. What joins men together is not the sharing of bread, it is the sharing of enemies. Okay. Hey, the next one is Joseph McCarthy. He lived from 1908 to 1957. And he said, McCarthyism is Americanism with its sleeves rolled up. He said, today we are engaged in a final all-out battle between communistic atheism and Christianity. There's actually a lot of truth in that. We're either going to go back to Christian ethics or we're going to go to slavery, communist slavery. And right now, communist slavery is winning big time. Okay, the big transition moment was the loss of JFK, the president. That was sort of like one of those apex watershed moments where there was hope for Christianity and Christian ethics. Its resurgence, Father Patrick Peyton, Billy Graham, all this big Christian stuff in the 1960s, and even going into the 1970s, and then there was one last hope with Ronald Reagan, and then we sort of been rapidly going down since then. It's not too late for America to be good, but got a long way to go. All right. So he says, the reason why we find ourselves in a position of impotency is not because the enemy has sent men to invade our shores. Actually, they have done that now. Back when you made this quote in the 1950s, they hadn't done it yet. But they've done it since then. But rather because of traitorous actions of those who had had all the benefits from the wealthiest nation on earth that it had to offer, the finest homes, the finest college educations, the finest jobs we could give. Our job as Americans is to dislodge the traitors from every place where they have been sent to do their traitorous work. It's more like the opposite. The traitors are dislodging all the good men. That's the truth. That's not like a misstatement. That's the truth. The State Department is infested with communists. I have in my hand a list of 205, a list of names that were made known and are still working and shaping policy with our rulers. Okay, and I don't know how many of those names were accurate, but he was right. That people were pissed off back in the 1950s. They felt that USA had given Eastern Europe to the Russian communists, and they felt that USA had given China to the Chinese communists. Why didn't they support Chiang Kai-shek more? Why didn't they tell Stalin, leave, Poland, Lithuania, and all these other countries alone? But they didn't. Okay. Now, Joseph McCarthy continues. He says, now ordinarily, I would not take time out from the important work at hand to answer Murrow. However, in this case, I feel justified in doing so because Murrow is a symbol, a leader, and the cleverest of the jackal pack, which is always found at the throat of anyone who dares to expose individual communists and traitors. Okay. Yeah, and they really badmouth this guy. I haven't studied him that carefully, but he was actually doing something useful, pointing out the fact that USA was starting to be submerged into communism. And that's why there's always this push to get rid of Christianity, because Christianity says, hey, let's tell the truth. Let's be nice to each other. Let's promote freedom for everybody. Communism's like, no, shut up. You're just a farm animal. Shut up and do as you're told. All right, we're going to do one more person here today with this set of quotes. David McCullough. David McCullough lived from 1933 to 2022. He was a historian, Scots-Irish-American guy, and he wrote several popular history books. Here he goes. David McCullough. He says, we are all what we read to a very considerable degree. There's actually some truth in that. Why am I into nutrition? Because I read about it and talk about it and think about it every day. Okay. Why did I become a doctor? Because I read about it, think about it, and talk about it every day. And I went to school for it. All right, David McCullough. A nation that forgets its past can function no better than an individual with amnesia. Yeah, they deliberately make you forget the founding fathers because the USA has the greatest founding fathers of all time of any country ever in the history of the world. And they don't want the young people to know about it. And they don't want the young people to know that they were 98% plus intensely Christian and hyper-religious, including the ones you think are not religious, like Thomas Jefferson was a religious fanatic by modern standards. Anyways, he says, if everyone is special, then no one is. If everyone gets a trophy, then trophies have become meaningless. Never assume that people in positions of responsibility are behaving responsibly. Yeah, quite often they're puppets, doing bad things, just serving as a puppet, or quite often they're bad. McCullough continues. One of the regrets of my life is that I did not study Latin. I'm absolutely convinced the more I understand these 18th century people that it was their grounding in Greek and Latin that gave them their sense of classic virtues. The classic ideals of honor, virtue, and the good society, and their historic examples of what they could try to live up to. Yeah, they tried to pattern the United States based on the Roman Republic because they saw that as the highest form of government that mankind had been able to achieve thus far, and it lasted for about 500 years. There were sort of like three phases of Roman government. First, the monarchy, almost 500 years, then the Republic, about 500 years, then the Empire, about 500 years. Okay, and the Republic was the best one. And, the greatest Roman of all time, Cicero, tried to save the Roman Republic, but he wasn't able to. McCullough, curiosity is what separates us from the cabbages. It is accelerative. The more we know, the more we want to know. A nation that forgets its past can function no better than an individual with amnesia. Oh, yeah, I repeated that quote, but it's a good one. It's true. If you don't know your history, then you're like a leaf on a tree. You don't even know where you came from. You're stupid. Okay. Cicero had said, to not know what happened before you were born is to forever remain a child. Okay. David McCullough, the essence of writing is to know your subject. Okay. Well, I think that's part of it. You want to know your subject, but you also got to be able to write. You got to be able to tell a story. You got to be able to know what the interesting parts are for the audience. Okay, that's the quotes for this session. Hope you found those helpful.